In just 5 minutes, the world watched in stunned silence as William Harrison, a 68-year-old titan of industry, tapped send on his phone and erased $686 million 0 cents in market capitalization from the trading screens. One solitary tweet, and billions of dollars vaporized into thin air. All because of a seat on a plane. Imagine that. A single offhand line aimed at an airline's customer service practices, broadcast to his 250,000 followers, triggering an instant sell-off that rippled through investment firms and hedge funds alike. It wasn't the first time Harrison's words moved markets, and it certainly wouldn't be the last, but never before had something so trivial, so mundane as a seat assignment ignited such financial fury. And today, as cameras roll and passengers settle into their plush surroundings, the stage is set for an encounter that will prove just how swiftly privilege and prejudice can collide at 30,000 feet. The camera cuts to the first-class cabin of Horizon Elite Airways Flight 42, rows of rich caramel-brown leather seats, each a generous 21 inches across, bathed in soft amber lighting that promises comfort and exclusivity. The overhead bins click shut, the engines hum a steady baritone, and the faint hiss of conditioned air whispers through hidden vents. Polished chrome armrests beckon, and beneath each seat lies a plush footrest taut with promise. Every detail: angled reading lights, noise-canceling headphone sets, insulated service carts, speaks of luxury. It's a world removed from the cramped confines of economy class, a realm where the elite recline in opulence, while the rest of the cabin white-knuckles the flight. But in this tranquil bubble of privilege, one man's quiet rage simmers just beneath the surface. Enter William Harrison, tall, broad-shouldered, and still exuding the unmistakable aura of authority that carried him from a modest Midwestern upbringing to the helm of Harrison Innovations, one of the nation's fastest-growing tech conglomerates. His salt and pepper hair, neatly combed back, catches the glow of the overhead lights, and the tailored navy suit he favors sits impeccable against his frame. Pocket square, cream silk, subtly embroidered, peeks from his breast pocket, a final flourish that announces to the cabin, "I belong here." Yet it is his eyes, steel pure and unblinking, that reveal the deeper story. A determination honed by decades of boardroom battles, legislative hearings, and sleepless nights spent fine-tuning algorithms that now power satellites and smart cities worldwide. As Harrison steps into the aisle, each stride is measured. No wasted motion, no hesitation. He grips a sleek leather briefcase in his right hand, the weight of his expectations mirrored in the set of his jaw. A discreet earpiece ticks with muted white noise as his executive assistant briefs him on an incoming call. But Harrison's attention is elsewhere. He surveys the cabin with the practiced calm of a CEO inspecting a launch pad. Are the variables all in place? Are the contingencies lined up? Have I been shown the courtesy I deserve? There is a long-buried memory in his mind dating back to 20 years ago, when a rookie attendant mistakenly redirected his reservation and left him stranded in gate check. That slight, insignificant at the time, still stokes a quiet ember of indignation, an ember that, today, he plans to blow into flame. The camera lingers on the seat where Harrison will settle. Sumptuous leather that has been oiled to a gentle sheen, cushioning that promises both support and surrender, and controls that adjust everything from lumbar tension to headrest angle at the flick of a fingertip. He pauses, placing one hand lightly on the armrest, feeling the cool resistance of the material. In that touch lies the irony of his power. With one tweet, he can erase $500 million. Yet at this moment, he is forced to acknowledge his own vulnerability. A misplaced seat assignment could spark a conversation he does not want, a conversation about who is entitled, who is respected, and who is dismissed. Ahead, the flight attendant steps into view, a young woman with a poised smile and crisp uniform, the kind who'd been trained to address first-class passengers as if they were royalty. Her name badge reads Madeline, and her practiced composure suggests confidence, or perhaps boredom, a sign that she's seen this scene unfold countless times before. As Harrison locks eyes with her across the aisle, the warm cabin lights reflect off her perfectly stenciled brow. There is a flicker of recognition in her glance, almost imperceptible, as if she is weighing him. Is this passenger a routine inconvenience, or something more? For her, it is just another face passing through. For him, it may be the beginning of a reckoning. William straightens his tie, mindful of the cameras concealed in the ceiling panels and the onboard news crew, primed to catch his every move. He inhales deeply, enjoying the subtle scent of leather and lavender-infused air freshener. Detail, he knows, is everything. Then he takes another step forward, setting the briefcase down and pulling out a slim tablet to confirm his tweet has been dispatched. The screen flickers. At REM Harrison 68. First-class seats ought to be administered by those who respect the privilege. Forced into economy? Try innovating that. Stand your ground. Horizon Elite. Fail. He taps send, and instantly the tiny blue bird icon pulses in affirmation. Down below, the market reacts in real time. Algorithms execute trades faster than human eyes can follow, and the ticker tape begins its downward spiral. Yet here, in the hushed sanctum of first class, there is only anticipation. Harrison lifts his gaze from the tablet and meets Madeline's cool stare. Around them, a handful of passengers glance up, curiosity piqued by his understated theatrics. A champagne flute clinks in the background, the cabin door thuds shut. The engines spool, readying for takeoff. For a moment, time seems to hang in suspension, as though the very air is waiting for something to break. And then, Harrison closes his tablet, places it into his briefcase, and raises one eyebrow ever so slightly, as if to say, "Shall we begin?" Behind that raised brow lies a lifetime of lessons in power dynamics. He recalls boardroom showdowns where a single misunderstanding nearly cost him a merger, and Senate hearings where a senator's offhand remark threatened his company's reputation. He remembers the sting of being underestimated, not for his expertise, which is undisputed, but for his age, his appearance, the casual arrogance of those who assume that seniority implies obsolescence. At 68, he is anything but obsolete. Every line in his face, every silver strand in his hair is a testament to experience earned, battles won, and innovations launched. And now, as the flight attendant approaches, he intends to remind her, and anyone else watching, exactly who he is. Madeline takes a polite step forward, tablet in hand, ready to confirm his seat assignment. Her tone will be measured, professional. "Good afternoon, Mr. Harrison. May I see your boarding pass?" She does not yet know that the man before her is the author of the chaos unfolding on the trading floor, nor that in mere moments the airline president will be summoned by the board and asked to explain how a legacy carrier allowed its finest cabin to become the battleground for a tweet-induced meltdown. To her, this is routine protocol. To him, it is the catalyst for a confrontation years in the making. As she taps at her tablet, Harrison leans in just slightly, enough that she feels the weight of his presence. His voice, when it comes, is soft but edged with steel. "Madeline, good afternoon. I believe there's been a misunderstanding about my seat assignment." He lets the word misunderstanding linger, a velvet glove over an ironed fist. He does not smile. He does not lower his voice. Every inflection is deliberate, designed to unnerve. Around them, the cabin hums with polite oblivion. The sound of cappuccino machines, the rustle of newspapers, the tap-tap of screens unlocking. But in this bubble of comfort, Harrison's calm is like oil on water, serene on the surface, but beneath it, something dangerously combustible. Suddenly, A distant chime echoes through the cabin. Notification, perhaps, of his tweet hitting a tipping point in the marketplace. He feels a subtle tremor of satisfaction, not greed. This is about principle, not profit. He is not here to punish the airline. He is here to hold it accountable. And so he watches as Madeline lifts her head, eyes flickering with professional courtesy mingled with a hint of impatience. She will soon realize that the passenger before her is not merely an inconvenience, but the epicenter of a financial quake. And when that realization dawns, the planes will land, the news will cycle, and the world will remember this moment. The moment when a seat became more than a seat, when a cabin became a courtroom, and when a tweet became a weapon. For now, though, the moment is pregnant with possibility. William Harrison straightens his shoulders, grips his briefcase's handle, and fixes Madeline with a gaze that says, "I am here and I will not be moved." The warm lights glimmer on his polished cufflinks. The leather seat awaits his command, and the hush of first class holds its breath. The storm is coming, and in 5 minutes the market will feel its impact. But in this fleeting instant, all that matters is the space between a man and the attendant. Between expectation and entitlement, between respect and rebellion. And in that space, history is about to be written. The tension in the cabin snapped tight, like the final pluck of a guitar string straining to its limit. A hush fell over Horizon Elite Flight 42's first-class cabin the instant the young flight attendant's tone crystallized into cold steel. "Excuse me, sir," she said, voice laced with sharpness. "This seat is reserved strictly for first-class passengers only." She didn't bother to hide the edge in her words. All around him, the other passengers froze mid-sip or mid-turn, eyes flicking toward William Harrison with barely concealed curiosity. Some averted their gazes outright. Others leaned forward to murmur into the shoulders of their companions. The gentle hum of the engine seemed suddenly intrusive. The overhead reading lights too bright. The plush carpet underfoot felt stiff, every detail conspiring to heighten the moment. Harrison's hand, which had been poised to settle on the armrest, jerked back as though it had touched a live wire. His gaze flicked down to the crisp boarding pass clutched in his other hand. "William Harrison," it read in elegant script. "Seat 1A, first class." He took a measured breath, his broad shoulders rising in quiet protest, but the attendant's narrowed eyes gave him no room to slip in an apology or excuse. The insult hung in the air between them, heavy as storm clouds. For a heartbeat, Harrison considered producing his company ID glossy card bearing the Harrison Innovations logo, proof that he was indeed a first-class passenger. But something in him recoiled at the suggestion. He was not accustomed to proving his status. At 68, he had founded multi-billion-dollar divisions, negotiated mergers under the glow of television spotlights, and stood before Congress to defend his company's practices. No airline attendant had ever dared to question him so bluntly. Not in 20 years, not ever. Instead, he simply lifted his chin, the expression on his face cool and deliberate. "Madeline," he said, voice low but carrying the authority of decades in every syllable. "Would you mind double-checking? There must be some mistake." He let his use of her name linger, an unspoken reminder that he expected courtesy, not condescension. Her lips curved into a practiced, patronizing smile. She tapped at her tablet with long, polished nails. "I've already checked twice, sir. Your ticket is valid, but this seat has been reassigned. There was an upgrade error in our system. I'm afraid I can't seat you here." Her words were clipped, her posture prim, as if shooing away an unwelcome stray animal. Behind her, the cabin crew exchanged glances, whispers punctuated by curt nods. They formed a semicircle, as if auditioning for a silent play in which Harrison was the lead role in a farce he didn't want to perform. One attendant hovered with a chilled expression, poised to move Harrison to a seat farther back. near the galley, where the scent of coffee and pretzels swirled thickly. From the corner of his eye, Harrison spotted a petite, silver-hailed woman in the aisle seat across from him. Seat 1B. She sat upright, clutching her designer tote, her eyes wide with shock. He recognized her vaguely. Miriam Caldwell, retired High Court judge from Boston, a fellow traveler who just last month had praised Harrison Innovations' philanthropy on social media. The irony stung. Here they were, two pillars of esteem reduced to a spectacle over a computer glitch. Silence deepened. The soft thud of the cabin door closing plainside had faded into oblivion. All that remained was the taut hush of expectancy. Passengers' breaths came in small, controlled increments. One man, seated behind Harrison, peeked over his newspaper, frowning. Another tapped the armrest impatiently. Yet no one spoke. They sensed the gravity of the moment, though they were strangers united by uneasy curiosity. Harrison's heart beat in slow, deliberate cadences. He closed his eyes for the span of a single exhale and recalled a memory long buried. A gala dinner in Chicago, 15 years ago, when a young flight attendant had mistaken his seat on a red-eye flight and insisted on assigning him elsewhere. He had tried kindness, deference, even humor, but the attendant had persisted. It had left him stung, humiliated. In front of a cabin full of his peers tonight, he had sworn that would not happen again. He opened his eyes, inhaling the faint scent of lavender-infused conditioner still lingering in the cabin's recirculated air. He cleared his throat. "Madeline?" he said again, soft but insistent. "My ticket is here, in my hand. Seat 1A. Please hand it back to me and seat me where I belong." He extended the pass deliberately, fingertips grazing the edge of the printed name. Madeline hesitated, just a fraction of a second, but it was enough. Her posture stiffened, shoulders squared, as though summoning the weight of her training to resist him. "I'm sorry, Mr. Harrison," she said, tilting her chin. "There are protocols." "Protocols," Harrison repeated, voice calm, but the single word landed like a blow. He stepped just enough into her space that she felt the warm breath of his presence. "Protocols exist so we can serve people fairly. At this moment, I am first class. Please recognize that." He paused, giving her a chance to retreat, to relent. But her eyes remained unchanged, cool, unyielding. Behind them, a man in the bulkhead seat adjusted his tie, shifting in his ultra-plush recliner. A woman to Harrison's right fumbled with her silk scarf, glancing between Harrison's stern profile and the attendant's unbending countenance. You could almost hear their thoughts. What will he do? Will he make a scene? Will we be delayed? Social media will love this. Harrison met their unspoken questions with resolute calm. His jaw tightened. He spoke again, evenly. "Madeline, our disagreement is not about me. It is about an airline's responsibility to honor its commitments. I ask you, for the sake of courtesy and professionalism, to seat me in the cabin to which I paid." He folded his hands behind his back, posture erect, as though he were addressing a boardroom rather than a stewardess. Every inch of him radiated authority. For the first time, the attendant's mask flickered. He glimpsed something behind her eyes, a hesitation, a tiny crack in the armor of her training. She swallowed, lips pressed in a thin line. Then she looked away, tapping furiously at her tablet, as if it were an offending rival that must be silenced. She scrolled. Her finger hovered. Finally, she lifted her gaze back to him, eyes downcast. "Sir," she said, voice lower now, "I will see what I can do. Please, have a seat outside the cabin while I sort this out." Even as she spoke, Harrison felt the weight of others' stares intensify. Social media warriors in their seats, readying phones, passengers shiftying, simultaneously uneasy and fascinated. Miriam Caldwell raised an eyebrow, as if urging him not to let this slide, to force the airline's hand publicly. And at that moment, Harrison made a choice. He would not ask quietly. He would not yield. He leaned in so that only she could hear. His voice dropped to an almost conspiratorial whisper, refined but edged with steel. "Madeline," he said, "if you cannot correct this now, I will involve your manager and broadcast this entire conversation, sanitized for accuracy, to my followers. I will share your refusal across every social channel, and I will demand an apology from your president. Do you understand me?" Time seemed to suspend. The attendant's breath hitched, her jaw clenched. Harrison could almost feel her pulse at her throat, the faint tremor beneath her composed veneer. She was trained to serve. She was trained to enforce rules. But she was not trained for an executive of Harrison's caliber to corner her in such a manner. Behind her, an older flight attendant hovered, concerns flickering in her eyes. The man with the tie cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably. A murmur passed down the aisle as passengers exchanged glances. Someone in the back of first class pulled out a smartphone under the seatback, its screen blinking to life. Miriam Caldwell gently set her tote on the floor with a quiet sigh, as though preparing for a courtroom drama. Finally, the attendant nodded. Her shoulders slumped in reluctant acquiescence. "Mr. Harrison," she said, voice quieter still, "please take your rightful seat." She stepped aside, pointing to 1A with a curt gesture. Harrison nodded once. Without a word, he turned and walked with measured grace down the aisle, each step deliberate. The soft carpet swallowed the sound of his polished leather shoes. Overhead, the reading lights glowed like silent witnesses. As he approached his seat, he caught a glimpse of the older attendant who had hovered, the one with the empathetic eyes. She gave him a small, understanding nod. In that gesture was the unspoken acknowledgement of the wrong done. Harrison settled into the expansive embrace of the 21-inch-wide leather seat. He inhaled deeply, letting the rich aroma of the upholstery wash over him. Passengers parted like the Red Sea, yielding to his presence. A nearby stranger dared a hesitant clap, which rippled into 2 or 3 more, not loud but enough to break the hush. Someone clicked record. Phones came out. Already the digital audience beyond the cabin was swelling by the second. Madeline remained just outside 1A, tablet in hand, head bowed. Harrison lifted his gaze and caught her eye for a moment. There was regret there now, the faintest sheen of contrition. Yet still she did not speak. He inclined his head slightly, a gesture of both triumph and empathy. "Thank you," he said simply, voice carrying just enough for her to hear. She nodded once, turned, and retreated. Harrison watched her go, thinking how seldom he felt such pity. A man of 68, he knew the weight of decades, the triumphs, the missteps, the lessons learned. He felt pity for this young woman, whose training had led her to mistake protocol for principle, whose ambition had blinded her to basic respect. And yet, he felt no malice. He believed in redemption. He believed in accountability. He turned back to his seat, pulling out his tablet once more. The words from his earlier tweet still blinked on the screen. First-class seats ought to be administered by those who respect the privilege. Forced into economy? Try innovating that. Stand your ground. Horizon Elite. Fail. Below it, replies cascaded in real time, shock, support, decrying the airline's elitism, praising Harrison's stand. Already the stock tickers were reflecting the ripple. A global audience watched as he raised a single eyebrow and tapped refresh. In that moment, the cabin settled, the crew regained composure, and the hum of the engines reasserted itself. Harrison felt the seat mold to his frame, supporting both his body and his resolve. Around him, first class regained its veneer of exclusivity, yet something fundamental had changed. The microphone had been passed, the audience had been engaged, the narrative had shifted. He leaned back, crossing one leg over the other, and allowed the moment to sink in. He had refused to be marginalized, he had refused to be silenced, and he had refused to let protocol eclipse decency. In doing so, he had shown that a privilege unaccompanied by respect was no privilege at all. Outside the window, the runway lights began to blink, ready for taxi. Inside, Harrison tapped his tablet again, preparing another update. A measured note of thanks to those who spoke up, a suggestion that the airline undertake bias training, and of course, a final wink of triumph in the form of a well-placed emoji. For this was a victory not just for himself, but for principle. And as Flight 42 rolled forward into the night, its engines thrumming like a victorious anthem, William Harrison reclined his seat, confident that in a matter of minutes, the market and the world would take notice. Not merely of the dollars lost or gained, but of the reminder that dignity is earned, not assigned, and that sometimes, even at 30,000 feet, a single man can remind the world why respect always deserves a first-class seat. The seatbelt sign had long since flickered off, and the hum of the engines filled the hush of first class once more. Yet William Harrison did not relax. The plush 21-inch leather seat felt suddenly confining, as if every curve had been designed to remind him of the walls his childhood self had faced. Around him, passengers returned to their champagne and conversation, but for Harrison there was no comfort in luxury. He sat upright, the late afternoon light through the oval window casting a warm glow over his silver hair. And in that light, he saw not just a CEO, but the frightened boy he once was. Across the aisle, Madeline, the flight attendant, reappeared with a service cart. As she passed, she muttered under her breath, thinking Harrison couldn't hear, "People who like to eat fancy food have no idea what real life is like." The words slipped out in a cynical lilt, delivered to no one in particular but loud enough to cut through the cabin's polite murmur. Her contempt was unmistakable, an accusation that the wealthy cared only for their own comfort, blind to those who served them. The moment the phrase reached his ears, Harrison's heart clenched. Around him, startled passengers glanced up, uncertain whether they had heard correctly. Some swallowed hard, others shifted in their seats, as though the cart's wheels had struck a nerve. Even the overhead reading lights seemed to flicker, as if the cabin itself had been jarred from its soporific calm. And in that abrupt crack in decorum, Harrison felt every past indignity come rushing back. He closed his eyes and let the attendant's words echo. "People who like to eat fancy food," he whispered internally, tasting each syllable. They weren't just idle gossip. They were a verdict rendered against him, against the life he had built, and against the child he once was. In that verdict lay a history of being judged by appearances, of being dismissed before speaking a single word. It was a history he had fought to rewrite. But tonight, in this first-class cabin, it threatened to be written anew. And then the world shifted. In his mind's eye, the cabin gave way to the stark fluorescent lights of a small regional airport decades earlier, an airport so modest it boasted only 2 metal detectors and a single conveyor belt. The noise was different too, not the gentle drone of jet engines, but the tinny clank of gate locks and the shuffled footsteps of travel-weary families. Harrison was no grand CEO there. He was just a boy of 8, hair uncombed, jeans patched at the knees, and a school-issued backpack slung over his shoulder. He was standing in line with his mother, clutching her hand as she tried to smooth down his frayed collar. He looked down at his shoes, scuffed, mismatched socks poking out between sole and fabric, and felt a burn of shame in his chest. It was his first trip on a plane, a rare treat planned by his factory worker father who had scraped every last penny to get them here. But instead of excitement, the boy felt dread as he shuffled toward the security checkpoint. When he reached the front of the line, the security officer, a large man with a tight buzz cut, eyed him from head to toe. The officer's brow furrowed as if unwrapping a parcel and finding it empty. "What's on your person, kid?" he barked, though his eyes never left the boy's torn jeans. The boy stammered, "Nothing, sir. Just my ticket and my backpack." He held them out with trembling hands. Without warning, the officer snorted. "That clothes," he said, voice thick with disgust. "You think you belong here?" He snatched the boarding pass from the boy's hand and flipped it around. "Look at this ragamuffin. No respect for the process." He thrust the pass back, stamping it with a savage thud. "Go back. When you dress like a gentleman, maybe then you pass." In that moment, the boy's mother gasped and reached out, but the officer waved her off. "Stand back, ma'am. Next." His contempt dripped like acid, corroding every ounce of the boy's excitement. The line behind them started to swirl with whispers, shoes untied. "Look at those jeans. No manners." The buzz of disapproval closed in, drowning out the metal detector's beep. Tears welled in the boy's eyes. He swallowed hard, trying not to let them spill. His lower lip trembled as he scanned the room for an escape, but there was only the officer's cold stare and the relentless march of passengers. The boy shrank under the weight of judgment, wishing the floor would open and swallow him. He felt his mother's gentle hand on his shoulder, a silent apology in her eyes, but the damage had been done. In that instant, he learned that the world's doors often swing shut, not on merit or character, but on appearance, on the simple fact of what one wore. He was sent back to the waiting area, heart pounding, face burning. His father, who had been ahead in line, turned in disbelief when he saw his son escorted away. Their eyes met. His father's a mixture of anger and helplessness, the boy's filled with humiliation. They missed the flight that day, and half a week later the family scraped together enough money to return home. The disappointment lingered long after the suitcase had been unpacked, an indelible mark on the boy's sense of self. The flashback faded like the dimming of an old film reel, and suddenly William Harrison sat bolt upright in his first-class seat, breathing quickly. The lavender air of the cabin smelled faintly of almonds, but for a split second, it had been the sterile tang of fear and injustice. His knuckles whitened as he gripped the armrest. The attendant's mocking words, "people who like to eat fancy food," hung between them like an accusation that resonated with every crushed dream he had carried as that boy. He leaned forward, gaze locking on Madeline's retreating back. In her uniform's crisp lines, she carried anonymity. Just another stewardess in a service industry row. Yet the contempt in her voice pierced him more deeply than any slight from a competitor or senator ever had. It touched a nerve he had tried, for decades, to bury under accomplishments and accolades. A soft chime announced the beverage service, but no one dared approach him. The cabin's atmosphere thickened, passengers held their breath, aware that something far larger than a seating dispute was unfolding. Here was a man twice their age, a public figure worth more than many small nations in market cap, and yet he was being judged the same way he once had been judged, by his apparent privilege. He shut his eyes, steadying his breathing. He felt the familiar surge of resolve that had carried him from that shabby airport to boardrooms in New York, Washington, and beyond. He had built a company that transformed skylines, but tonight he realized that his greatest invention might have been the steel of his own spirit. He would not be dismissed. Neither would any child who looked like him, ragged clothes and all. He opened his eyes and inhaled, letting the cabin's quiet impose calm. Then he sat back and allowed the soft click of the service cart to drift by. When the attendant paused near his seat, he looked up with crisp composure, his eyes steely but not unkind. "Madeline," he said, voice steady, "this isn't just about a chair. It's about how we treat one another on a fundamental level." He let the memory speak through him without detailing it. Yet the weight behind his words carried all the years of that small-town security checkpoint. You spoke of people who eat fancy food as if privilege gives license to disregard basic respect. But respect isn't reserved for those who can afford it. Respect is owed to every person, no matter their circumstance. Around them, a few passengers shifted in their seats, some nodding ever so slightly in silent agreement. Even Madeline hesitated, her practiced smile faltering as she absorbed the gravity of his quiet indictment. She realized this was not a tantrum born of entitlement, but a stand born of deep personal history. He continued, voice softening in that way leaders do when they want an audience to lean in. I wasn't always seated among the wealthy. Once I was just a boy in ragged clothes, hoping to see the world beyond my small town, and I learned that night that dignity can be stripped away by a single glance or word. I carry that boy with me every day, and I carry that lesson, that no one should be measured by their appearance, but by the content of their character. Madeline's eyes flicked down to the gleam of his cufflink, then back to his earnest gaze. The service cart's wheels slowed, as if waiting. For a moment, the world held its breath. I ask you, Harrison concluded, to consider the power of your words, and to remember that privilege comes with responsibility. It's not just about seats or service. It's about recognizing our shared humanity. Silence followed, a charged, almost sacred pause before Madeline dipped her head in respectful acknowledgement. Over her shoulder, the other attendants watched, their expressions shifting from detached professionalism to something more akin to remorse. Harrison sat back, letting the first-class menu flutter from his fingers. He felt a lightness settle in his chest, as though by speaking his truth, he had freed not only himself, but every passenger who had witnessed the exchange. The cabin resumed its rhythm, the soft clink of silverware, a discreet cough, the distant beep of the cockpit door. Yet beneath that calm, something had irrevocably changed. What began as a seating dispute had transformed into a lesson in empathy and respect, a reminder that every person carries a story, and that the highest privilege is the power to honor rather than diminish that story. As Horizon Elite Flight 42 cruised at 30,000 feet, William Harrison gazed out the window at the fading horizon. He thought of the boy he once was and the man he had become. In that quiet space between cloud and sky, he made a vow that whenever he wielded his influence, in markets or in moments like this, he would use it to uplift those who still felt the sting of being judged. Because for him, it had never been just about a seat. It had always been about reclaiming dignity, one person at a time. William Harrison's hand hovered over the touchscreen of his smartphone, the soft glow illuminating the fine lines etched into his knuckles. Around him, first class felt like a cathedral of comfort. Plush seats, muted lighting, hushed murmurs. But Harrison's mind was anything but serene. He had rehearsed this move for decades, yet the moment of execution still pulsed with electric thrill. The woman within the tent pole with bright red hair looked like a little girl. With a steady finger, he tapped open his secure messaging app and addressed his most trusted lieutenant, Jessica Marlowe, Senior Vice President of Corporate Relations. Meanwhile, cancel all Harrison Innovations travel and corporate agreements with Global United, effective immediately, no exceptions. He paused only to ensure the message delivered, then turned his attention to Twitter. His thumb swiped open the app, and he composed a blunt, unambiguous tweet. Global United staff forced me from first class to economy simply because they didn't believe a black man could afford a first-class ticket. Boycott Global United. He tapped send. In the cabin, the faint trill of a notification bell sounded. Another retweet, another like, another confirmation that his words were already detonating across the digital landscape. Within 30 seconds, Jessica replied, her message succinct. Understood. Actions underway. Will confirm when complete. Harrison lowered the phone and breathed in the cabin air, scented faintly with lavender and leather polish. He allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. The plan was simple, but ruthless in its effectiveness. Punish Global United's bottom line for humiliating him and, by extension, any person of color. He was not simply a man offended. He was a CEO wielding influence. At first, the ground staff felt only a ripple. A cancellation notice flagged in their CRM. Then a trickle of emails from Harrison Innovations' travel desk, calling off every upcoming flight, every hotel reservation, every corporate event booked through Global United. Contracts were terminated, accounts receivable invoices were recalled, inboard catering agreements evaporated. The ripple grew into a wave. Meanwhile, on Twitter, Boycott Global United exploded. First came the sympathizers, dozens of posts decrying the airline's racial bias. Then came the journalists. Breaking, tech CEO sparks boycott after discrimination aboard flight. Headlines proliferated across news feeds, syndicated within minutes. Live tweeting passengers in the cabin shared Harrison's text exchange with Jessica and the tweet itself, capturing double taps and retweets in real time. Even the flight's in-cabin Wi-Fi log began to show a spike in usage as dozens of first-class passengers silently checked their feeds, eyes widening behind designer sunglasses. At Harrison's side, Miriam Caldwell, the retired judge seated in 1B, tapped his shoulder. "Bill," she said softly, "you've started something big." He inclined his head, eyes glinting in triumph. "All it takes is a spark, Miriam." Across time zones, Global United's executive suite became a war room. Phones rang off the hook. The CFO stared in disbelief as the stock ticker on the office wall began its steep descent. Shares down 5% within the first 2 minutes, then 8, then double digits as institutional traders tweeted their surprise and local traders dumped positions. Automated trading algorithms keyed to trending topics triggered a cascade of sell orders. In mere minutes, the airline's market cap bled hundreds of millions, its carefully cultivated reputation smeared by the viral hashtag. On the 50th floor of the airline's headquarters, the CEO of Global United, Patricia Langford, paced before her leadership team. Her voice was tight with fury. "Who in God's name authorized this?" she demanded. "How did we let this happen, and why didn't any of you stop it?" Heads bowed. The director of customer experience swallowed, his throat dry. "Ma'am, the regional staff at JFK were enforcing policy, but in hindsight, Langford barked. We're hemorrhaging money and reputation by the second. Find Bill Harrison, call him, apologize, then figure out how to undo this, now." Back in the air, the cabin lights dimmed for the in-flight movie, but passengers could barely focus. Smartphones glowed like tiny beacons in the half-light, each screen displaying Harrison's tweet or a news alert. Some passengers scrolled through sympathetic comments, others tapped the hashtag to share their own stories of discrimination. A reporter for a business blog, on board to cover Harrison's keynote appearance in San Francisco, lifted his DSLR to film Harrison, disgracefully, narrating in a hushed whisper, "Ladies and gentlemen, you're witnessing corporate diplomacy at its most public and potent." Even the flight attendants paused. The previously aloof Madeline glanced down at Harrison's tweet on her own device, shame and shock flickering across her face. She remembered his calm rebuke in the aisle only moments before, the flash of personal pain behind his dignified words. Now she saw the full force of his response. Harrison sipped his champagne he'd already paid for in advance, a subtle reminder that he paid for privileges the airline had tried to deny him. He savored the crisp acidity, then checked his notifications again. 10,000 retweets, 20,000, 75,000 and climbing. Comments poured in from industry leaders, civil rights advocates, and everyday travelers. Some heralded him as a hero, others criticized the use of corporate might to exact personal revenge. Harrison didn't care. This was about principle. Respect demanded respect, and discrimination needed consequences. He leaned back, folding his hands across his stomach. Miriam Caldwell raised her glass to him in toast, a wry smile on her lips. "You certainly know how to make a point," she murmured. He returned her smile, eyes warm. "It's not enough to call out bias. We have to hit it where it hurts, in the balance sheet." Soon, the captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be landing in San Francisco in approximately 20 minutes. We apologize for any inconvenience and hope you've enjoyed Horizon Elite's service tonight." The irony was not lost on Harrison. Horizon Elite had remained above the fray, its pristine image unmarred by the scandal next door. As the cabin prepared for descent, phones were tucked away, murmurs died down, and life's familiar rhythms resumed. Yet beneath that calm lay a current of change. Passengers who had once reclined in certainty now understood the fragility of privilege and the power one person can wield to defend dignity. Harrison glanced at Madeline, who moved down the aisle, collecting glasses and blankets. He offered her a nod of acknowledgement, a gesture that carried his respect and forgiveness. She returned it with a tentative smile and a slight bow of her head. It was the kind of silent reconciliation that no corporate memo could mandate. By the time Flight 42 rolled to a stop at Gate 7, the market had already stabilized. Global United shares were bouncing back on speculative buying, but the damage had been logged in financial and public relations ledgers alike. Harrison stepped off the plane, feeling both triumphant and reflective. The protest would not end with a single tweet. Activists would keep the hashtag alive for weeks. Industry analysts predicted government inquiries into airline discrimination policies. Harrison Innovation's name appeared in every discussion, not just as a tech leader, but as a corporate conscience. In the days that followed, board meetings at Harrison Innovations were unusually celebratory. Investors called to congratulate him. The board chair toasted his decisive action. "William," she said, "you've done more for corporate diversity and respect in 5 minutes than most CEOs achieve in 5 years." He smiled, but beneath his satisfaction lay a quieter thought. Real change would require more than spectacle. He began drafting a proposal to fund unconscious bias training across multiple airlines and to endow scholarships for underprivileged students to study aviation management, a plan to turn viral outrage into lasting progress. Late one evening, Harrison sat alone in his study, the soft glow of a desk lamp illuminating a photograph of his younger self seated beside his parents at that long-ago regional airport. He remembered the boy's shame. He remembered the sting. He remembered the vow he had made to rise above indignity and rewrite the rules. And now, at 68, he had done so again. This time on a public stage with stock tickers and global hashtags as his measuring stick. He set down his glass and tapped out a final tweet. "Privilege without empathy is empty. Glad so many have joined the conversation. Let's ensure this moment leads to real change at every airline. Respect for all." He sat back and watched it go live, hopeful that the conversation would deepen. In the months that followed, Global United overhauled its training programs, issued public apologies, and reached a settlement with Harrison Innovations that included joint diversity initiatives. The hashtag Boycott Global United faded from trending lists, but remained a cautionary tale in corporate ethics courses. Other airlines quietly reviewed their own policies, mindful that any passenger armed with a smartphone and principle could spark a storm. For Harrison, the victory was bittersweet. He had won a personal battle and catalyzed industry change, but he knew that discrimination was a persistent scourge, not a one-time scandal. He remained vigilant, championing causes that uplifted those who still felt judged by appearance rather than character. As William Harrison embarked on his canceled keynote tour, replanned now under a new airline partner chosen for its commitment to inclusion, he reflected on the journey from that scratched-up boarding pass to global headlines. He had shown that a single tweet could do more than disrupt markets. It could ignite conversations, spur reforms, and remind the world that respect is non-negotiable. And so, as the next chapter of his life unfolded, one in which he mentored young leaders, funded scholarships, and advocated for systemic change, he carried with him the knowledge that sometimes the most potent plans are those born of personal history and executed with both force and integrity. Because in William Harrison's world, dignity isn't a perk of privilege, it's a birthright that no one has the right to revoke. And when it is threatened, he will be there, tweeting, canceling, and fighting, until the world remembers that every first-class seat belongs to the humanity of us all. In the cabin's soft glow, the overhead screens usually reserved for in-flight entertainment had been replaced, by Harrison's insistence, with live market data courtesy of a secure satellite uplink. The moment Harrison's tweet hit the public domain, all eyes turned upward. In bold, bright white letters against a deep navy backdrop, the ticker read GUA, Global United Airlines, followed by a vertical red bar that plunged without hesitation. Within seconds, the display flashed 3.4%, 5.7%, then 8.2%, each dip accompanied by an audible ding that sounded like punctuation marks in a financial obituary. In less than 5 minutes, the cabin's hush was punctured by the relentless alert. Market cap down $686 million, 0 cents, scrolling in solid crimson. Passengers who had moments before been immersed in champagne and conversation now found themselves transfixed by the screens. An elderly couple seated behind Harrison adjusted their reading glasses, incredulous. A tech investor 2 rows over tapped frantically on her phone, her eyebrows knitting together in disbelief. Even the uniformed flight attendants paused mid-service to watch the spectacle unfold above their heads. The numbers didn't just move, they convulsed, each fraction of a percent translating into real, tangible loss, a testament to the raw power of social media fused with financial markets. Unbeknownst to most passengers, Horizon Elite's first-class cabin was fitted with discrete high-definition cameras, installed not for surveillance but for quality control review. In an instant, those lenses captured the rawest reaction of all. Madeline, the flight attendant who had first denied Harrison his seat, frozen in place. The footage revealed her pupils dilating as she stared upward, the service trolley's brass rails clinking against the cart with increasing urgency. Her professional composure unraveled in real time. Her posture stiffened into panic as she snatched at her earpiece, fingers trembling. The camera picked up every detail, the sheen of perspiration on her brow, the quick dart of her gaze toward the cockpit door, and then, in the span of a heartbeat, the outright scramble as she reached for her company-issued smartphone. It was a moment of raw humanity. A young woman whose confidence had been unshakable minutes before, now, confronting the financial maelstrom her supervisor was scrambling to contain. The footage would later become part of Global United's internal crisis report, an unfiltered record of how quickly a brand could buckle under the weight of its own missteps. By the time the cabin camera panned away, Madeline had already darted into the galley, screen pressed to her ear. Her voice echoed through the cabin's intercom channel, though she attempted to mask it beneath the steady hum of the beverage cart. "Helen, it's Madeline. Yes, right now," she whispered urgently. "The stock's free-falling. 686 million gone in minutes. What do we do? How do we stop this?" Behind her, another attendant leaned in, eyes wide. "They're calling investors," she said, voice quivering. "Our call center just lit up. Clients demanding answers, lawyers threatening lawsuits." Madeline's knuckles whitened as she gripped the counter. She swallowed hard, voice cracking slightly. "Tell the CEO she needs to issue a statement now. And call corporate communications. I need talking points on my screen in the next 30 seconds. Across the aisle, Harrison observed quietly from his seat. In his lap lay his tablet, screen dimmed but notifications blinking like distant stars. He sipped his champagne, tasting the dry elegance of the moment. There was no triumph in his posture, only a quiet fulfillment of principle. Respect must carry consequences. Meanwhile, in the bustling terminals below, a local business reporter named Carla Nguyen stood precariously atop a rolling suitcase, smartphone balanced on its handle. Her backpack held a portable LED light and a compact microphone, equipment standard for her live BizWire Now segments. She switched her broadcast to public, panned the camera past the revolving doors, and then fixed it on herself. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen," she began, voice steady despite the excitement crackling in her eyes. "I'm reporting live from Gate C7 at San Francisco International Airport, where just 5 minutes ago, shares of Global United Airlines plummeted, erasing a staggering $686 million, 0 cents in market value." She held up her phone to show a separate live view of a terminal monitor cycling through tickers. "As you can see behind me, the Market Watch screen still displays the aftermath. GUA, down, down. Deep in the red." Nguyen paused for effect, letting the numbers sink in. This dramatic sell-off was triggered by a tweet from William Harrison, the 68-year-old CEO of Harrison Innovations, who alleges he was forcibly moved from first class to economy on racial grounds. The hashtag Boycott Global United is already trending nationwide, and investors are scrambling for damage control. We'll bring you more updates as this story develops. Back in the cabin, the reporter's live broadcast trickled through seat-back audio and passenger smartphones, uniting first-class travelers in a shared moment of astonishment. Some leaned forward, whispering into designer iPhones. "Did you see that? $686 million. Others, 1K3. At 30,000 feet, justice was being served. William Harrison, a 68-year-old tech CEO, sat quietly in his first-class seat. Moments earlier, he had sent a tweet that would set off an avalanche. Global United staff forced me from first class to economy simply because they didn't believe a black man could afford a first-class ticket. Boycott Global United." Passengers glanced up. Stockbrokers froze mid-spreadsheet. Retirees whispered about dignity, and flight attendants adjusted their posture. Harrison remained composed, his silver hair catching the soft cabin lights as retweets poured in. A memo was already on his tablet to Jessica Marlowe. "The system has been activated." Thousands of feet below, chaos erupted. At Global United's HQ, stocks plunged. $686 million, 0 cents lost in under an hour. The SVP of Investor Relations barked into her headset, "Get legal, PR, and customer service on a three-way, now!" CEO Patricia Langford scrambled. "We need a transcript of that tweet and a public apology. No buybacks. This is worse than bad PR. It's a reckoning." Across the media landscape, headlines blared. Omontwe, $686 million, 0 cents. Gone. Boycott Global United goes global. The tweet had turned into a movement. On TikTok, users reenacted the confrontation with filters and dramatic captions. On Twitter, memes depicted first-class seats transforming into courtroom benches. On Facebook, passengers shared boarding passes, pledging to never fly Global United again. But inside the aircraft, there was only quiet. Harrison looked out at the fading horizon, remembering a childhood moment, rejected at a boarding gate because of his tattered clothes and skin color. The pain had never truly faded. Jessica called via the secure cabin line. Her voice was tight. "Bill, the backlash is massive. They want you to take the tweet down." Harrison listened as the board's panic filled the line. "Investors are furious. Global United is our travel partner. This could bring down both companies." He glanced at the tweet still glowing on his phone screen and whispered, "No." Jessica pleaded, "This could take down everything you built." But he was resolute. "Then it falls. They need to see the cost of prejudice." Back at his company, Harrison Innovations, the board debated. General Counsel Marcus Liu raised legal concerns. Eleanor, head of ethics, pushed back. "If we delete it, we become complicit. William is standing for something bigger than profit." In first class, a quiet shift occurred. A young tech executive messaged his team, "Cease deletion, amplify, stand with Harrison." Dr. Lana Perez, a civil rights attorney, nodded. Better to shake the world than remain silent. The plane began its descent into San Francisco. The cabin, once tense, had become contemplative. Even flight attendant Madeline, who had sneered earlier, returned with water and a letter. "I'm deeply sorry for my words. Thank you for your courage." He gave a respectful nod. She had learned what no training manual could teach. Upon landing, passengers applauded, not for the pilot, but for what had unfolded. Cameras flashed as Harrison stepped into the aisle with Miriam Caldwell, a civil rights lawyer and fellow passenger. The man who had turned humiliation into transformation walked past nods of respect. In the days that followed, the impact deepened. Global United issued a statement, pledging $10 million. D-Rank Group owns the same tenants as the Reed Roosevelt-owned Community Diversity Fund. Mandatory bias training for all employees. A zero-tolerance policy toward discrimination. But Harrison wasn't done. In a boardroom, he spoke firmly. "Prejudice has a price. We will not pretend it." His next tweet read, "To those who fear fighting prejudice will cost too much, it already costs us all. Prejudice has a price." Public response exploded. While some investors initially balked, support rallied fast. Harrison Innovations' brand surged with trust and purpose. Analysts revised projections upward. Values, it seemed, still had value. Other airlines followed. SkyWest launched a third-party service audit. Surveys. Respect rating on passenger surveys. Continental Connect revamped scripts with monthly empathy refreshers. Grassroots groups mobilized. Wings for All pushed for mandatory airline bias reporting. Boarding Without Barriers hosted workshops, teaching passengers how to file discrimination complaints. Harrison declined all of Global United's perks. When CEO Langford called with a personal apology and offers of compensation, lifetime lounge access, ambassador roles, stock options, he said, "Does an apology erase the humiliation of being told I don't belong? If you want to make this right, change your culture." Global United, under pressure, followed through, but it was the broader industry shift that mattered most. Harrison launched his own fund, scholarships for underrepresented youth pursuing aviation and hospitality. He convened summits with CEOs and legislators to push for lasting reform. Back on another flight, weeks later, Harrison sat in first class again. This time, there were no cameras, no tweets, just peace. Across the aisle, Madeline smiled sincerely. There was no longer a divide, only shared humanity. His final message, in a video filmed from his company's lobby, was direct. If you've ever felt less than for how you look, where you're from, or what you wear, speak up. Every click, every share, every voice counts. Let's make dignity standard at every altitude. In the end, William Harrison didn't just challenge an airline. He challenged an industry. He reminded the world that silence upholds injustice, and that sometimes a single tweet can awaken a storm of truth. To everyone who stayed with us until the very end, thank you. This wasn't just a story about one man on one flight. It was a story about all of us, about the quiet battles we fight, the dignity we defend, and the moments when we choose to say, no more. If you're still here, listening, watching, reflecting, know this: you're not just part of the audience. You're part of the reason these stories matter. Because without someone to hear them, even the most powerful truth can go unnoticed. Thank you for giving your time to this story, for choosing to lean in when it would have been easier to scroll past, for feeling the weight of injustice and choosing empathy. In today's fast-paced world, that's no small thing, and we're deeply grateful. To those of you who have lived through moments like these, whose lives have been shaped by judgment, exclusion, or quiet bias, we see you. Your courage, your patience, your resilience, they are the heartbeat of change. Keep telling your stories. The world needs them. And to every single person who left a comment, hit like, or shared this video, thank you for helping this message travel farther. It's one thing to be moved by something, but it's another to take that feeling and do something with it. Your voice adds power to this one. We also know that many of you care deeply about the kind of world we're building, not just online, but offline too. If you want to keep seeing stories like this, stories that dig deeper, challenge assumptions, and put humanity first, consider subscribing to our channel. It helps us more than you know. And if you want to be notified when we publish our next episode, because yes, there's more to come, go ahead and tap the little bell next to the subscribe button. That way, you won't miss when the next story drops. No pressure, just a quiet invitation to keep the conversation going. Because this isn't the end. It's part of something larger. A movement, a shift, a reminder that change often begins not with headlines, but with heart. So from all of us at Telltales, thank you for being here, for staying present, for choosing stories that matter. And if this video resonated with you, if it made you feel something real, don't let it end with you. Share it with someone who needs to see it, start a conversation, or simply take it with you into your next flight, your next meeting, your next moment of quiet decision. Because dignity should never be negotiable, and together we can help make that truth fly a little farther. The aircraft touched down softly on the tarmac, its wheels humming a low chorus against the concrete as the sun dipped behind the skyline of San Francisco. From the outside, it was just another flight completing its journey. But for those inside, especially those who had witnessed what unfolded in Seat 1A, it was anything but routine. William Harrison rose from his seat with the same measured grace that had defined every step of his career. Every calculated risk, every fight for dignity disguised as a logistical decision. He nodded to Miriam Caldwell, who met his gaze with the quiet understanding only a fellow warrior for justice could share. Around them, passengers murmured softly, some still absorbing the ripple of change that had passed through the cabin. Others simply stared in awe, not at a celebrity or a billionaire, but at a man who had used his voice not to boast, but to break chains. As he stepped into the jet bridge, the air felt different, crisper perhaps, or maybe simply clearer. The weight of old memory had been lifted, at least for now, and in its place stood something rarer: vindication. Not the kind etched in headlines or quantified by trending hashtags, but the kind that settles into the soul and whispers, "You stood tall." From that moment on, William Harrison was no longer just a tech mogul. He was a catalyst, a spark, a mirror for others to recognize the battles they'd buried beneath professionalism and politeness. His story reverberated far beyond the runway, stretching across social media timelines, classroom discussions, boardroom ethics debates, and family dinner tables. Parents told their children about the man who wouldn't give up his seat, not out of pride, but because giving it up meant surrendering something far more precious than leather upholstery: the right to be seen, to be heard, to be respected. Days later, the image of Harrison seated in 1A, eyes steely and calm, would become iconic, printed on magazine covers, dissected by pundits, reposted by millions. But the true impact could not be captured in pixels. It lived in the subtle shift of policy at an airline headquarters, in the trembling voice of a trainee flight attendant asking for help understanding bias, in the legislative conversations sparked across multiple states about discrimination in travel and public accommodation. This wasn't just a disruption. It was a declaration that said, the days of quiet compliance are over. The age of consequence has arrived. And as we look to the skies, those wide, infinite spaces once reserved only for the privileged, it is important to remember the ground from which we rose. For William Harrison, the child once turned away at a gate for his clothing and skin, the circle had closed. But in that closure, a door had opened for countless others. To those who have journeyed with us through this story, through every scene of conflict, every echo of injustice, and every triumphant turn, we offer more than just thanks. We offer you our shared hope. A hope that stories like this don't just entertain, they awaken. Hope that when we see injustice, we won't look away. Hope that when power is misused, we will remember our own. And so, from the team behind this story, from the writers, the researchers, the editors, and every voice who lent care and intention to each line, we thank you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for staying until the very last word. Because in a world overflowing with content, your time is sacred, and you chose to spend it here. With us, with William, with the passengers of Flight 42, you chose to bear witness. That means more than we can say. To everyone who's ever been told they didn't belong, to everyone who's ever swallowed words they should have spoken, to everyone who's been mistaken for less than they are, you are not invisible. You are not alone. And your voice, yes, yours, has the power to move mountains. Or in this case, markets. So, as the credits roll and your screen dims, we leave you with this. Let the story stay with you. Let it remind you that respect should never be conditional. Let it urge you to speak when silence seems safer. But let it inspire you to stand, not just when cameras are rolling, but especially when no one is watching. Because true change doesn't begin in boardrooms or on runways. It begins in the quiet conviction of one person who dares to say, this, and sometimes that one person is enough. From the bottom of our hearts, thank you for being here. Thank you for caring. And thank you for choosing a story that puts justice in the pilot's seat. We'll see you in the next episode. Until then, keep flying forward. As the final moments of Flight 42 drifted into memory and the echo of Harrison's stand continued reverberating through boardrooms and newsrooms, something more enduring began to take shape. A conversation. Not the fleeting kind that trends and fades, but the kind that lingers in the heart, that stirs discomfort and prompts action. It spread from dinner tables to corporate retreats, from HR policies to civic forums. And though William Harrison had returned to his quiet life, a man once again cloaked in dignity, not defiance, his stand had become a telltale sign of something greater. Because the truth is, this wasn't just a flight. It wasn't just a tweet. And it wasn't just a market crash. It was a mirror, held up to an industry, to a culture, to all of us. It revealed what so many already knew but hadn't dared say aloud, that discrimination doesn't always wear a name tag. It can hide behind protocol, policy, or tone. It can live in a glance, in a reassignment, in a muttered comment delivered with assumed impunity. And for those who've experienced it, whether in a plane, a classroom, a hospital, or a sidewalk, that pain doesn't just sting in the moment, it lingers, it shapes you. William Harrison chose not to stay silent in that moment. He could have. He had the resources to brush it off, to fly private, to insulate himself from future insult. But he didn't, because he remembered what it felt like to be dismissed before he ever spoke. And he knew, if he didn't stand up now, who else might be told tomorrow that they don't belong? His story reminds us that leadership isn't just about how many people report to you. It's about who you speak for when the room goes quiet. That's why this story exists, not just to recount a dramatic event, but to remind us of our shared responsibility to speak up, to listen, and to shift culture.